All right, so we are here with Bill West of Grady Ranch in Whigham, Georgia. And Bill, can you tell us about the history of Grady Ranch? And I mean, beginning to end, tell me your story. I want these producer profiles to allow people to see the face behind their food and you who's making it all happen. So tell me the journey and what have been your favorite parts.
Well, the journey as far as the grass-fed would go back as far back as my father. I'm 68. I grew up on a dairy farm, and my father was a cattle farmer and also loved beef cattle also. But he started us working with cattle from when I don't remember, before I was young enough to probably not even remember being with the cows and working with cattle and growing up on that dairy. One of my brother-in-laws and I started a dairy here at Grady Ranch in about 1976 on there. My father bought this place while actually I was in high school on there. This is not part of the original West Haven, which is where I grew up. I'm Bill West. This was in Grady County, and they named it Grady Ranch, and that's how it got its name. It wasn't anything very exotic about that. Bob and I operated a rotational grazing dairy, and starting at that time, we using grazing as our main feed commodity, and then used mixed the regular feed in the barn. Back then they fed in the barn as our supplemental feed, and then they would go out and grazing. We kept expanding the dairy over the years and continued the rotational grazing part. We didn't really know we were a rotational grazing dairy. That wasn't even a term used at the time. We just did it because that was an easy way for milk production and a cheap way of feed. While we were in the dairy business, half the dairy animals, of course, are steers, are bulls when they're born. Over the years, we tried to come up with ways to use the dairy animals. And as we would raise or use these steers rather than just sell them as bull calves, we started raising them as steers. And when the grass-fed market became viable and people started asking for grass-fed in this area, we started selling these steers instead of just a normal take them to the market and sell them. We started getting inquiries about buying them as grass-fed steers, and they were going to a wholesale market, and I couldn't even tell you what name brands they sold in. In 2012, or by that time, milking 500 cows was such a small dairy, it was no longer viable as a dairy industry went. And so we closed the dairy at the exact same time when we were selling that. We bought an Angus herd of cattle, about 200 purebred Angus cattle, and started basically a cow-calf operation, but kept the rotational grazing since that was the expertise that we had. And then since we did it enough years, we could practice with taste. And then over the last 3 years, two of the things we really worked on was taste, and of course the other was production. And we had to go from being a year-round breeding rather than seasonal breeding, because if we were going to sell meat to the public, we needed it fresh year-round. So we had to evolve that into a year-round breeding, and we've increased that the beef cow herd quite a bit in that length of time, because a couple of hundred beef cows is not that many cows compared to milking 200 cows on there. And we backed out of row crop farming. We grew peanuts, soybean, cotton, same thing that anybody else does in this area, hay. We were row crop farmers also, along with the dairy. As we backed out of the row crop, we started increasing the dairy herd and started turning more of our cultivated fields into pastures and using that. But winter grazing seems to be our easiest as far as production and taste in South Georgia because of our heat, humidity, But the University of Florida developed perennial peanuts as basically South Georgia, North Florida's alfalfa. It's production of that. And it's a warm season grass in this area. So as we did that, and we found out that basically our summer grazing, especially on the steers in the last 3 months of finishing, if they're either on ryegrass or perennial peanuts, we have a pretty good tasting product at that time. And we're able to, as long as we keep them on those two, and especially the last 12 months, really make sure that particular group of steers, that age group, from about 14 months old to 24 to 28 months old, are on our best grazing and don't have to work very hard at it. They have a decent marbling, and that's basically how we came about working on taste in that area. And but that's how we got into the grass-fed market of it. In the last 3 years, we've steadily doubled what we were doing every year, and then this year we almost couldn't supply it because of that COVID and the big increase in the demand for grass-fed beef, especially if it's a decent and tasting grass-fed.
I love that you guys talk about the old way of doing things. You know, it's not. Carrie, our executive director, talks about that all the time. You know, regenerative ag isn't something that's brand new, and the way it's being almost pushed today, and it's getting back to the old way of doing things and the way it's always been done to regenerate the land. So I love this.
Coming out of the dairy industry, it gave us, when we didn't get a proper amount of grazing done in a particular day, we didn't have milk in the tank the next morning. You can't go a 12 or 14-hour period in dairy industry that you don't keep a consistent nutritional need of that animal fed. Of our operation is grass fed. We don't do any other feeding or any other type of feeding out. We're trying to make it as simple as possible and keep operating as far as the grass fed. Where the grass fed market took off in this area, started picking up, like I said, about 5 years ago, a little bit of interest. By 3 years ago, quite a bit of interest. And then in the last 2 years is when it just really got hot. People got more interested in health food. Local grown is big part of the same thing as far as grass fed would be local grown also. The local vegetable farmers, fruit, the growing, even citrus industry in our area, all these things are local grown and local farmers. And our local farmers market here that we're a co-op in, member of, which is a Tallahassee, in Tallahassee, Florida, farmers market co-op. The growth in the last few years has been nothing compared to 2020. 2020 has just been, it took us totally unexpected, the demand for it. And what we have to be careful to not overpromise what we can do and what we can supply, because we're trying to keep our supply at a high quality. And so, because if I got something that I wouldn't want to bring home myself, I will take him and go to the normal local sale barn with him on there.
Now, what have you seen? How have consumers responded to COVID, and it specifically referring to your meat? You know, what has been what they've taken from this experience?
Oh, well, you couldn't buy a freezer, and I don't think you can hardly buy one now, just a normal freezer. And there was the reason for that, just so many people wanted to fill up their freezers. It was part of that same hoarding thing, I think. That was the one when they suddenly started buying a lot of it. The way we've grown what we've sold, with our main advertisement, to start with, we did a lot of cooking demonstrations. My wife did a lot of educational cooking. We would do just cooking everything from slightly aging New York strips in our refrigerator and then cooking it and serving it, and showing proper ways to using grass-fed meat, especially as we learn to do it better and better ourselves. Our customers themselves over the last 3 years have been our main marketing. Our customers that we have would bring back other people, said, you got to try this, it's great. And so since COVID started, what we did, we just give away raw meat. We just give away packages of ground beef and say, and go home and try it. And it was really kind of cheating because they'd come back and say, well, okay, you got me hooked. And, but younger people that never cooked the pot roast or, you know, like a chuck roast or a shoulder, we did demonstrations for that. It takes a lot of work and a lot of meeting customers, a lot of listening to customers. What is it that they want? And that type of market. And it's being an old redneck that's been just working on the farm. That's not something that I was used to doing, but I actually got where I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoy meeting these people. Bobby enjoys meeting them, and especially likes working with the restaurants. My wife enjoys teaching with the doing recipes and teaching recipes. And when, you know, somebody walks up, hi, I want to try this, how do I do it? And we'll either refer them to the website, but they'll still sit down and they can call her at any time. She'll get calls while they're in their kitchen cooking, and Renee, how did I do this? Or what did I do wrong here? Catherine keeps up on the website what we got that week. That's my niece-in-law, Catherine Holden, and post what we have. And we actually to the point now that like if it's a smaller steer that we from a heifers that week and we have small ribeyes, we know what customers like the small ribeyes. We know what customers like the larger ones. Things like that. You've got to really learn your customers. What is it they want? You get them in there as grass-fed because they want to be healthy, and then you try to keep your customers satisfied for all these other reasons too. You know, that they like it, they can call and ask you questions.
No, I mean, to be able to call during dinner and be able to, while someone's cooking dinner and have them fill you in on how to cook your beef, that's unmatched. You can't find that anywhere else except from America's small family farmers. And that's what's really beautiful to see from you guys is how, you know, inwoven you guys are in the community through your involvement in the restaurants and people, you know, through your involvement in teaching the community how to cook. And I really like how you talk about having a lot of attention given to the taste of the meat. That's something I haven't heard a lot of people discuss. And that you've manipulated it right through feeding them different grasses and finishing them different ways with different types of grasses. How has that process been of you experimenting with different tastes and different grasses?
In the dairy industry, you ran into what they call all-flavored milk. If you have some of your brackises are, you know, your turnips, especially if you get some wild turnips, but there are other plants, some milkweeds, some other things you have to watch out for that would change the flavor of the milk. Well, that's also true with meat. You have to watch out for those sort of things. So you might have something that does a really good job in production, but you really don't want your steer eating it especially the last 3 to 5 months of his life, because that's when it's really picking up that flavor, and that flavor gets into the fat. And once that flavor's in the fat, it's going to be picked up by the customer from there.
It's easy for me to see that this is not something that you just push out a product. I mean, you are an artist. You have quite an understanding of every single aspect of how you can affect your product in the fine. I mean, it's like talking to somebody producing fine art in New York or a chef from a 5-star restaurant. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've had a good time talking to 5-star restaurant chefs. So they some of them, they can't afford to buy it for the like for the restaurant, but we have a lot of chefs that take it home. And but David Gwynn is is a chef there in Tallahassee that owns 3 restaurants. And David uses some of our meat, but David was just great in when we would try different cuts of meat and what fats and where. And we'd run it to David, and David would come back with this long dissertation of how it felt on the back of his throat like he was doing a fine wine. And, you know, I'd kind of scratch my head and then finally say, well, David, did you like it or not? You know?
So I know you're one of our certified members here at American Grass Fed Association, which is why we have you on. And you proudly display this label on your beef. Why is that label important if you're in the shoes of a consumer?
We promote that very much, but even for other people that's not buying from us. We promote, make sure that whoever you're buying from has a third-party audit. Make sure that you can go visit that farm. If they just using a term like all natural, mostly organic, well, we grass-fed it, and then they'll have a little bitty wording in grain finish. We even have noticed on other ones, they'll say, we use American grass-fed practices, but they're not grass-fed certified, you know, but we use those, we use this as our guideline. But we've been at it enough now to know that, you know, people will use any term that they possibly can to make a sale. And not only American grass fed, but even if they are somebody saying they're organic, they're this, that, and the other, talk to those people. I can tell you, if I can talk to that person, I can tell you in 2 minutes if he's really doing a grass fed operation or not, because of what I'm doing. But I'm sure if I went to somebody else that was growing organic mushrooms or tomatoes, for that matter, they might could fool me, but somebody else doing it, they can't. You know, if they're somebody has done all those certifications. So they should be able, if somebody is truly following all these American grass-fed standards, they have all American grass-fed records that you require, that you are working with your county agent, your local veterinarian under those guidelines. But if they weren't certified in these things and they don't want to take the trouble to do that, I would be really questioning, are they really taking the trouble to do what they say they're doing? And, but it doesn't matter what the product is that our customers are buying, because all the other things and I just encourage all the time, go meet them. If they should invite you to come see, they should be proud of what they're doing. They should want to show you. And that's a big part of what, you know, we're reading in the grass-fed website and going with the, you know, that American grass-fed seems to promote also, and that's what I really like about it. The American grass-fed promotes a relationship between the local farmer and their customers.
That's beautifully said. I mean, and that's exactly what AGA is here to do. And that's why it's important if you're a farmer, because as you've said, like, it holds weight. It is a respectable certification. And with that, if you're a farmer, consumers respect that. And we do the work to link the local consumers with their local producers. And I think it couldn't be said more beautifully than that. All this being said about your amazing product, I think there's one question left, and that's, you know, I mean, I know you said we can get it at some markets and some restaurants around your area, but what are all the ways that people can get your products? I saw that you guys do shipping live animals to local butchers. How far is that range? I mean, how can we get your products? Who can?
About the furthest we've been going with live animals is about 50 miles, and generally that would be they're buying probably 3 or 4, you know, just to make where the trucking, you know, because I'll do the hauling personally, and Renee, my wife, will drive the truck and deliver cows on there. But but usually there are 3 processors close to us, or all within about 20 minutes. Most people buying locally will use one of those. We sell through an online thing that's, where it's all picked up in Tallahassee. It's Red Hills Online, which is a Tallahassee marketing group that with vegetables and other chicken, free-range chicken, eggs, you name it, all types of vegetables. Our main sales is at a farmer's market on Saturday mornings in Tallahassee. It's the Tallahassee Farmers Market. We sell quite a bit direct from the farm now, where we give up 10% discount picked up here. We don't have a store as such, but the old dairy farm is now used to have a 5,000 gallon milk tank, now has a walk-in freezers. And we've turned that into basically just a pickup point for people. And especially people that are not buying 1 or 2 pounds of hamburger or 2 steaks, they're coming to buy $300 or $400 worth of meat at a time. They will drive to the farm direct and pick up. We have 2 health food stores that sell our meat and keep it in, and they move quite a bit of, especially ground beef. And they'll call with special, I have a customer. One is Albany, Georgia, and one is Bainbridge, Georgia, right here by us. Tallahassee, we sell direct. And going back little by little, we quit pushing much of this beyond selling direct to the customer, mainly because that's just the most profitable sale. It's the easiest sale to control. It's the easiest sale that they got what they wanted.